Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino. It is Saturday, August 13th. As you know, each week here on Hey Coach Tony, we discuss the hottest topics affecting us, the adults, in the youth sports equation. And as always, I take your calls because I want to hear what you got to say. The studio lines are opened up at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Hey, folks, if you remember, just 2 weeks ago, I did a story on Terry and Andrea Deenan. This is the New Canaan couple that turned a 10-year-old girls' softball game into an outright fiasco when they verbally and physically assaulted an umpire and one of the tournament officials. Anyway, we're hoping to have an update on that story because the Deenans were scheduled to be arraigned in court just this past week. My guest on that particular show was a gentleman by the name of Steve Kolitz, longtime umpire, also the tournament official involved in the story who got punched in the jaw. During the course of the show, Steve and I were talking a little bit about the overall relationship between parents, coaches, and the youth sports officials. And I thought it might be kind of fun to maybe just once hear what the officials really think about us as parents and coaches. After all, we always hear about, what we think about the officials. So I figured, why not? Let's give them a crack at venting a little bit. So anyway, after the show, I got some really good emails and phone calls, and so I decided to do a new segment that we're going to call The Umpire Strikes Back. Now, if we had any kind of a budget here at all, this is the part of the show where you'd hear some Star Wars music, but don't hold your breath. Every time I ask for something that costs money around here, I get shot down. So apparently the 25 cents it would have cost to play the Star Wars music just wasn't in the budget, like Steven Spielberg is listening to me at 6 in the morning out in California. Anyway, I really like the idea of the segment, so we're going to do something brand new here in the studio. I have in studio with me today not one, not two, but three very distinguished umpires from throughout our listening area. All of them have some very specific opinions on the things that we as parents and coaches do that gets just a little bit under their skin. Now, some of these, quite frankly, were real eye-openers for me because we were talking about them before we got on the air. So I hope you enjoy this. And by the way, if you have something to add, maybe you don't like what you hear, or maybe you just want to stay on the offensive as a coach or a parent and take a few jabs of your own, just call us here in the studio. The number again, 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. In fact, you know what? I tell you what, I got so many good emails from folks that I compiled my own little list of the top 10 clever insults for youth sports officials, and we're going to get to that a little later on in the show. I'm giggling because some of these were hysterical. Some of them I cannot read on the air, but there was a real good list we put together. So if you call the studio and you want to give us one that cracks this top 10 list, I tell you what, I'll invite you to come in and do a show with me, and you might even get a Hey Coach Tony t-shirt out of the deal, maybe even the highly coveted Hey Coach Tony coffee mug. Again, the studio lines are already open at 855-HEY-COACH. As I said, I got three terrific and accomplished umpires with me today. They are, and in no particular order, Steve Kolitz of New Milford, Connecticut, who, like I said, was on the show with me 2 weeks ago. We also have Larry Cichiello of White Plains, New York, and we also have Dan Drabik, also an established umpire in Connecticut. Gentlemen, welcome to Hey Coach Tony. Thanks for being with us this morning. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing good, thanks.
Good. All right, so we're going to have a bit of a mob scene going on here today, but that's okay because I've never had more than one guest in studio. But if our chat before the show was any inclination of how the show is going to go, I am very, very excited. First things first, Steve, I understand that there's some new information regarding the case of the Deenans, Terry and Andrea Deenan. I don't know how much is concrete, but can you give us a quick update on what's happening with those two? They were supposed to be arraigned this past week?
They did have their arraignment. It was put off a little bit, a couple days, and in fact, that's one of the reasons I came in a few minutes late, picked up certified letters, something to the effect of that they've applied for accelerated pre-trial rehabilitation. I talked to the prosecutor during the week, and they said that that's what they've applied for, and the judge will do some decision making, I guess, on the 14th of September. At 9:30 in the morning.
I
so
tell
that's
you
their
what,
court date.
if the judge is listening, and he's probably not, and that's okay. I mean, hell, you guys weren't even listening to the show until I called you to come in here. But do not, please, my God, do not grant these people any kind of continuance or any kind of leniency based on pre-trial rehabilitation is what they're calling it. My God. All right, well, listen, since I got 3 established umpires here in the studio, I want to get your thoughts on something that, before we get into your beefs about parents, something that happened, and it just goes to show that my show is never going to go off the air. Well, it might go off the air with me, but the idea of kids' sports stuff is never going away. Just 2 days ago, something happened right in my own backyard. And by the way, you guys hear me say my own backyard all the time. Well, it's because I'm being told more and more not to announce on the air where I live, so bear with me on that. But every once in a while...
Yeah, we try not to announce where we live either.
Well, you're umpires. I mean, listen, people love me. You're umpires. My God, people can't stand you. But every once in a while, I like to take off my coach's hat and, just go down to the park and watch a game. Well, Thursday night, I grabbed my kids and I brought them down to the park because they all had friends that were playing in playoff games, the WPBA up where Westchester is. They're in full-blown. Matter of fact, today I believe is the championship games for a couple of the teams in town. I almost slipped and said the name again. So I brought the kids down there just to watch their friends and, big old park. We had a good time. Well, one of the kids, there's something magical about watching the games when none of your kids are playing, and that's actually something I like to do. But one of these games was an 11U boys baseball game, and my hometown boys were doing a pretty decent job. There was a somewhat close play in one of the games, and that always happens, right? But then my phone rings, and it's my daughter. And all she says is, "Daddy, I think you better get over here." Right? Exactly what Dad wants to hear when he knows his kids are on the opposite side of a big park. "You better get over here, Daddy." Anyway, she continued and said, "Some lady just got thrown out of the game for cursing, and now there's a guy going nuts over here, and everybody's yelling."
It sounds all too familiar.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my first thought that comes to my mind is, oh my God, Terry and Andrea Deenan decided to take that rack on the road, and they're invading my hometown. Anyway, in reality, there was a series of events that created an escalation at this game. And the good news is, and I'm going to cut to the chase on this one, nothing really bad happened. Nobody got punched out. But I do want to walk you guys through the series of events and see what you think about it, okay? So early in the game, in fact, very first inning, top of the first inning, visiting team, kid hits a 2-run homer. And as is typically the case in a semifinal game, what happens? The teammates are all excited. They all go to home plate to greet the kid and celebrate his home run. In the course of this celebration, one of the teammates high-fived the kid who hit the home run before he touched home plate. All right? You're all nodding your head and smiling because anyone want to guess what happened next?
I know what I would do in that situation.
What would you do, Larry?
Okay, first of all, I'm not going to deprive a kid of a home run. Okay, because of a technicality like that. Now, I don't know if the association that assigns my games is in total agreement with me.
Sure.
It's a very debatable issue because you want to follow the rules. But I'm gonna watch the touch of home plate, of course, very carefully.
Yep.
And I just might say I'm not quite sure if he touched him or not, Coach. If a coach wants to get technical with me, I'm really not sure. I know there was hand movement, but I'm really not sure if they actually made contact.
Well, here's the interesting part, and this is according to the coach of the home team, because I'm friends with the guy. He said we didn't even notice it, but the umpire did. And, Larry, I was kind of interested to hear what you had to say, but they did bang the kid out. The first kid they allowed to score, but the kid who hit the home run, they banged him out. So the coach, the visiting team, the visiting fans, they all obviously get bent out of shape, and they start to argue. Shortly thereafter, there's a play at second base. And I believe it was in the second inning. Bottom line is, whether the kid was out or not was irrelevant. But the kid was called safe, sliding under the tag. Again, the coach and the fans argue this time, but this time one of the visiting moms blows a gasket, and she yells out, and I can't say what she yelled out, but I can allude to it, "You gotta be effing kidding me." 11-year-old baseball game. The umpire obviously gets very upset at this and goes to the woman and ejects her. I'm not against this at all. At this point, the behavior is getting to one of the home team dads who yelled out from behind the center field fence something along the lines of, "Hey, lady, there's no place at an 11-year-old baseball game for something like this." The visiting coach then asked the umpire why was she thrown out of the game. Stupid question in my mind, but let's just assume he couldn't hear it. Now, at this point, the umpire repeats verbatim what the woman said. Then the coach says, "Gee, you shouldn't be using that kind of language in front of a bunch of 11-year-old kids." So it's important to note that I've been told the umpire, and again, this is subject to opinion, so I may agree or disagree, but I've been told that the umpire was doing a pretty good job of keeping a level head for the most part. Personally, my feeling is that this game is already out of control and teed up for some bad things to happen. Larry, what do you got to say?
Well, I think, first of all, there's poison in the air here, okay? Mm-hmm. And somebody better take a stance real soon.
All right, somebody? Thank you for leading me into who?
This game, the umpire, okay?
Absolutely.
My trump card right here is the head coach. Okay, I'm not gonna eject the lady for using the F word. Okay,
really?
No, because I'm gonna incite it's gonna encourage more problems. I want to do it peacefully and quietly. I'm gonna walk up to the head coach, say, "Coach, we can't have that. You better go talk to your parents." Okay.
Interesting.
And let him solve it. Okay. Not that I'm backing away from anything. I just want to settle this peacefully.
Well, and let him be the bad guy.
Yes, and the inmates are taking over the asylum here for sure.
No question.
Okay, there's no question. And if you're in the second or third inning and you have two major problems already, you're going to be in for a long, long ball game as an umpire.
No question.
And that's, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago as well, where one of the first things we said, and Dan, we did this yesterday in our game that we worked together, at the pregame meeting with the coaches. Coaches, you guys are the head coach. Everything funnels through you and back to you. If we have a problem with parents, coaches, players, we're coming to you to control it. And if they don't control it, then we start, getting them site administrators, which in major tournaments they'll have, or the head coach to go take care of it. And we'll give them 5 minutes. Next time we'll give them 2 minutes.
Hey, there you go. You'll learn something. Dan, you going to say something?
Yeah, going back to the beginning, I'm assuming there are 2 umpires in this game?
No, that was surprising too. For a semifinal game, you'd think the WPBA would have 2 umpires, but there was 1. Now, having said that, the call at second base, I was told by the coach that the umpire got all the way out to the pitcher's mound. And for a Little League field, a call at second, that's pretty good. I'm not going to give somebody the, "Hey, you're growing roots" comment if he's at the mound calling the play at second base.
But on a home run call, first thing he should have done is realize that those kids were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
You turn around and you push those kids back right away.
Mm-hmm.
First thing you say, they're excited.
You mean just verbally push them back?
Verbally push them back.
You're doing the hand signal? We're on the radio. I got to make sure people know you're not shoving 11-year-old boys around the ball field here.
Because you're already watching the kids going, make sure he touches all the bases. So these kids, obviously, you can hear them that they're coming right up to the plate. You've got to push them back just to avoid that whole situation.
Sure.
So right there, he should have taken control of that, push him back, and then you totally avoid everything.
Mm-hmm.
Next, I agree with Larry. Go to the coach first.
Mm-hmm.
It's early on. Have the coach calm the parents down.
Yep.
If they don't, then it's an immediate eject.
If they're not going to take control, we will.
Well, thank you for saying that, because we're going to get to that a little bit later. I totally agree with what you're saying. But you guys got to allow me to continue the story, because it's not over yet. In fact, it's only the second inning, okay? In the third inning, and I'm going to get to some of the story, then I'm going to have to take a quick break. But in the third inning, kid gets hit in the helmet. It grazes him, but he gets hit in the helmet by a pitch. The umpire first calls it a foul ball. Simple enough mistake. I've seen it happen before. I'm not saying it's acceptable or not, but the kid goes, "No, that hit me in the helmet." To which the umpire said, "Okay, go to first base." Now, who do you think is on the receiving end of that controversial call? Same visiting team. So this guy starts with the typical, "Hey, Blue, who's up in this game? The kids or you?" So. Okay. After that, I can't
that's
get
a very fair question.
It's a very fair question. Very fair question. Actually, no. Listen, I got to continue the story when we go.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio, and I'm joined in studio today by 3 terrific umpires who decided to donate their time this morning to talk about the various things that drive us, or I should say drive them nuts, about us, the adults, at these youth sporting events. And we're in the middle of a story Actually, not even the middle. So early. Like I said, it's only the second inning of this baseball game that we're talking about. And before the break, I talked about how a kid got hit in the helmet. It brushed him. The umpire calls a foul ball. The kid, not his partner, because there was no partner, the kid just said, hey, they hit me in the helmet. The ump says, really? Okay, go to first base. The kid should have said, no, actually, I hit it out of the park. Give me a home run. But anyway, the visiting coach, who so far, I got to tell you, I know this guy has a history of a short fuse, but he's had 2 calls go against him that are pretty tough calls. The high five before the kid touches the plate, and now this foul ball. In any event, later on that inning, there's a pop-up between home plate and first base. Now, you guys have done some 11-year-old ball games. It should be no surprise that between the batter, the pitcher, the catcher, the first baseman, and somebody's little brother who's sitting in the dugout, everybody's running towards that ball right now. So there's a cloud of bodies converging on where the ball was going to land. Well, from what I understand, the fielder slowed down, and this is where it's a little fuzzy, but the fielder slowed down and kind of veered out of the way from the base runner, and the ball dropped. Kid is safe at first base. The visiting coach then yells out loud enough for pretty much everybody to hear, and I'll quote, but I can't quote because I wasn't there for this one. This is according to the other coach. If that happens again, you don't slow down. You run that kid over. You knock him over, and it'll be interference on him. Now, we'll talk in a minute about whether or not he's right to the letter of the law, but I think we can all agree that this is not something that a coach should be yelling to a group of 11-year-old boys. I don't know what he wanted to get accomplished there.
Absolutely, but I mean, I think we can all shake our head that we've probably seen and heard that enough times that makes us kind of cringe for the rest of the game.
Now, you do want to say to your base runner, hey, you have the right of way, or, I'm sorry, to the fielder, you're fielding the ball. You can say you have the right of way. But if and this is where I believe this coach is actually wrong. If there's incidental contact while a fielder is fielding the ball, the base runner is at fault. If a second baseman or a first baseman drops a shoulder to clear away a base runner to catch a ball, that
becomes malicious contact, and it's a totally different scenario.
Okay. So, all right. Well, obviously, the home team coach obviously felt the way that we do about what the guy yelled out. So he directed some comments to the other coach who said this. Needless to say, the visiting coach is getting a little worked up, and a bit of a back and forth begins with stuff like, who are you to tell me how to coach my team, blah, blah, blah. Larry, what?
I say once the coaches start talking back and forth, I would put a halt to that immediately. I would say, guys, we're not going to have that here today in our game here, okay? Let's stop right now.
So cardinal rule, coaches should not be arguing back and forth, right?
That's why they put the dugouts on opposite sides of the
field. Yes, because, again, you're going to only create problems there, and you've got to nip it in the bud immediately, or you're going to lose control of this game.
Totally get it. Dan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I've had a guy whose mantra was from first to second base, take the kid out.
You know what? Hang on. In all fairness, guys who played know what a coach means, but I've also experienced coaches who it's a mantra and it's a mindset of go hurt a kid or go, make physical contact for the sake of physical contact.
Right. At that point, I just went over and said, maybe a better choice of words here.
Or teach your kids that so that, listen, my kids, I don't have to yell, take them out.
They know.
They should know. And it is part of the game.
Exactly.
And would I ever complain to an ump or a coach if one of my kids gets taken out because my shortstop doesn't clear the base path? No. But when you start saying take him out, and then a kid goes a little out of the baseline and goes in spikes high, that's when you're going to get me a little riled up.
You're just asking for trouble.
Absolutely. Larry, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I think levels of play are everything here, okay? I'm just not going to tolerate a coach of a 10-year-old team saying, well, take him out on that play. I'm going to have a chat with him at the end of the inning and say, are you really serious about that, Coach? We're 10-year-olds. You said we're 10-year-olds here, right, Coach?
No, it's 11.
Yeah, or 11.
That doesn't matter.
We really don't want to do that. I don't want you to encourage that again, Coach.
I couldn't agree more.
One of the biggest things in coaching that we see as an error is, especially the young coaching, they have these kids go to the bag on defense, and then stand there.
Yeah.
So they're inviting that obstruction by the defense, and they're just standing there as kids are trying to run round bases, and it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, at 11 years old, you'd think coaches are going to teach a kid when you're covering second base, whether it's a tag play or not, you don't just stand like a first baseman with your foot on the base, but that's besides the point. So again, you get this whole thing of, one guy saying, hey, these are 11-year-old kids, that's an inappropriate thing to say, blah, blah, blah. That finally comes. I'm still shocked that nothing significant has happened so far. But at this point, things calm down at least a little bit so that the home team coach steps away and says, point made. At that point, what happens? Visiting coach is still riled. He's still frustrated. So what does he do? He starts arguing the home run high five. He starts arguing the hit batter. He starts arguing the play at second base. So finally, this umpire decides to take control and says, you know what, coach, enough. And he tosses the guy. Care to guess what the coach's response was to that? What do you think? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you should. No. The visiting coach, the guy who got tossed. What do you think he did?
He had to explode.
Well, okay, this is an unfair question. He refused to go. He didn't punch anybody in the face, Steve. You're cringing. But he refused to leave. Yeah, I mean, remember,
we had an umpire in one of our games that had that happen. He threw out a coach. The coach refused to leave the dugout. So he gave him another 2 minutes and said, "Look, either you're leaving or I'm leaving," and he left.
Well, here's the thing, and I tell all umpires, always wear a watch. And people think it's so that they're on time for the games. No, it's for situations like this, because I've seen it 100 times, where you say, "Coach, it is now 3:03. If you're not out of here by 3:05, your whole team's out of here at 3:05." And that's the only way to deal with it. Don't stick your chest out, and we'll get to that part in a second. But again, this is the third inning of an 11-year-old baseball game. I don't know about you, but this is actually making me uncomfortable to even talk about. Anyway, the rest of the game happened to be relatively uneventful. My hometown boys actually threw a beatdown on this team, and I'm going to say where they're from, North Salem, New York. Okay? They threw a beatdown on this North Salem team, and actually by the fourth inning, they gave them the mercy rule, and they were trailing in that game. My question to my esteemed colleagues here, where did this little encounter, and you alluded to this, where did this little encounter of a baseball game go wrong? And how might this umpire have done things a little bit differently? And Steve, you alluded to it, so...
Yeah, it's the top of the first where he let the fans, the mother, start controlling the game and him not going to the head coach to hold them accountable. It's just so easy to go straight to them and hold them accountable. It doesn't always end up easy. We've had situations where the head coach is the problem. One of the most creative statements I ever heard of an umpire doing was going up to the head coach, asking the head coach who's in charge when you're not, and he pointed to the assistant coach. He turns his attention to the assistant coach and says, "You need to make sure that the head coach is out of the dugout now because he's been ejected."
Now that is real. That's like pointing to somebody at a crime scene and saying, "You call 911" instead of somebody call 911. You put some responsibility on somebody.
I agree with that point totally. I would say to the head coach, "Coach, do you have an assistant here to run the game?" And if he says no, then you've got to take a stand there, okay? And otherwise these kids are going to be deprived of playing, okay, because you're going to go in about 1 minute.
I had a high school game one time that the head coach did not have an assistant there that day, and the coach continued to argue with me. And I said, "Coach, I don't think you want to continue that because I'm looking in your dugout. There's no assistant coach." And at that point, if we tossed him, the game would be over.
Well, and you know what? At some point, especially a high school game, some cold justice, I think, needs to be served to some of these guys because they clearly don't have any priorities or perspective. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier as well, and I want clarification. Who, in your opinion, guys, and I'm going to ask Dan to start this one, who should be responsible for the behavior of the mom in this case?
Right away, the coach.
The coach? Okay.
The coach.
All right. Because a lot of people, and Larry said this first, but then he clarified it, a lot of people will say, the umpire, right? You guys should be in control of the game, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but as a coach, I got to tell you, I take a lot of pride in my team, and you know what? At a game, especially when I'm traveling, my spectators are a part of our team, and I am responsible for those people.
Right. Steve and I have done this several times where at the very beginning of the game, it's, "Coach, you're responsible for your team, you're responsible for your parents. If there's a problem, we're coming to you first, and you have 5 minutes to take care of it. If
or
you don't,
we got it.
We're done."
It's like my favorite line in The Godfather Part 2. When Fredo's wife is all drunk and dancing, and what does somebody say? Michael says, "You take care of this or we have to," and that's the same thing. And so there's a huge burden of responsibility on the coaches, and I'll explain because It turns out that the relationship between the parents and the coaches at games, and I said this 100 times before, but none of you guys listened to my show until today, it's just like the relationship between a parent and a child. Let me explain. Sports parents, like children, tend, and I don't mean you're all childish, but bear with me, they tend to follow the lead of the coach when it comes to behavior. Coaches, like parents, are supposed to set ground rules by which everybody behaves. All right, Larry's looking at me with an eyebrow raised. If a child acts inappropriately, Larry, listen to me here. The parent is supposed to step in and immediately squash it if they haven't already set the ground rules. You know, like when I was a kid. Hey, we're going to the store. You don't ask for anything. I'm not buying anything. And if you do, there's a problem. And you knew it, right? Okay. If not, the child's going to begin to act up more and more. So we all get this so far, right? The coach clearly did not have any guidelines or rules in place for his parents' behavior. And even if he did, he unfortunately fell victim to the oldest cliche in the parenting handbook. And what is that? Do as I say, not as I do. Ask any kid in the world, and they'll tell you that that gets old really quick. The kids realize this very early, and so do sports parents. So even if the coach had the best rules in place, guess what? None of the parents take him seriously because this guy has a history of getting tossed out of games.
Cross this line, you die. No, cross this line, you die.
Exactly. And so why wouldn't some of the parents follow suit and act like idiots? All right, listen, this is rolling right by, guys. I got to go to a break here.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. I am having a blast this morning with three very distinguished umpires who have joined me in studio to talk in general terms about how to handle certain situations, but we're also going to talk about some of the pet peeves that these guys have with us as parents and coaches. So I got to tell you, one thing that jumped out at me, and I love these, we call them, I don't know if they still call them rags. We used to call them rags when we would get on the umpires or on a player when I was a player. And by the way, these guys don't realize this. I do what I do now and shine a light on all the things that are wrong with sports because when I was a player, I was the biggest jerk you would ever meet. And I've said it, and whenever I say that, a couple of my college buddies will call in and tell me what a jerk I was, and that's okay. But I was talking during the week with Larry here, and by the way, Larry's the author of a book. It's called Excellent Baseball Coaching, 30 Seconds Away. He's published a whole bunch of articles online. He's got a CD, DVD. The website is larrybaseball.com. It offers some great tips. He's also a certified high school umpire in Westchester County. Anyway, we were talking about something that happened to him last week in a game where a pitcher was, how do you say this, outwardly showing a bit too much emotion after a close pitch that was called a ball. Now, Larry, do me a favor. All the umpires in studio are making the mime gestures of what this kid did, and they're probably accurate. But, Larry, walk us through what happened, because it brings up a good point that I want to address.
Sure. Okay, I called the pitch a ball on this 14-year-old player, and he was visibly upset, to put it mildly. He starts prancing around the mound, stomping his feet. Now, that's putting me on display, okay?
Absolutely.
I will not put a player or coach on display, okay, unless absolutely necessary, okay? Just won't do that. So he's prancing around, and I really didn't take too kindly to it. So my mask is off, and I said, young man, I said, drama class starts on Tuesday. I said, that pitch is 10 inches off the plate, and now we're going to play baseball, and that's all we're going to do here, okay? And I'll give myself a little credit. The next pitch was a borderline pitch, and I gave him the inside corner on it. So I got to, you got to put these things behind you really quickly because you owe it to the game to get the call right.
So you made your point.
Yeah.
And you made it loudly enough that
and he was,
everyone else got that message.
And then he was on his best behavior, and then an inning or two later, him and I are talking like we're best friends. So that's all I want. That's all I want.
Guys, in general, is that one of the big pet peeves for umpires when an underage kid with a little bit less experience and knowledge than you kind of shows you up a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, the big thing that happens, I mean, we try not to deal with the players too much at all. But in a case like that, one of the things that we've done or that I've trained in clinics and seen trained in clinics is to, instead of doing it outwardly, I mean, I always have a rule of trying not to be any more of an idiot than anybody else around me.
Me too, but it doesn't always work.
And my wife says sometimes that's very difficult for me. But, is to go out, brush off the rubber, talk to the kid nice and quiet. Only he and I know what the conversation is, and it's simply that's enough of the theatrics. Let's play baseball. You throw strikes, I'll call balls and strikes, and the game.
Now, you almost slipped and said, you throw strikes, I'll call balls.
Well, we've had cases of that where, again, talking about parents, they've got a great angle from the stands. We've actually had umpires, and I don't know if I said this 2 weeks ago, where they've gone out to the stands or in a dugout and sat next to them and watched a pitch and called it from there. I've gone out to the stands in between innings or to a dugout and sat there and said, no, I like my position better.
So well, listen, the reason I asked the question is, and I can certainly understand how being shown up, Larry, is really annoying. But, what about the other way around? And you guys are kind of alluding to it, so I want to get into this. Don't you think that there are some umpires, and I do think there's a time and a place to send a message, and Larry, I think that's what you did in that case, but there are umpires and other sports officials who certainly watch too much TV. I mean, I've been at games where the official makes it a point to loudly announce things like to a coach if you're arguing. The one I hate the most is one more word and you're gone. And I can live with that, but a lot of times that's followed up with a little bit of a baiting. Do you got that, coach? Are you going to say anything else now, coach? At that point, if I was a coach, I'd get tossed just to prove a point. It's like, know your place. And granted, you're in charge of the whole game, but don't try to be bigger than the game. And in the major leagues, guys, it's happened all the time. Larry, you're jumping at the bit here. What do you say?
I absolutely can't stand umpires who try to become the main event here, okay? I despise them. Mm-hmm. This game is about the players, okay? It's not about the coaches. It's not about the umpires. I'm just going along for the ride, okay? Mm-hmm. It's about these kids, and like I said, I have a huge problem with umpires who try to become the main event here.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't afford front row seats at the stadium. So it feels good to be in an even better seat than that a lot of times for our games and be involved.
And that's the one that really grinds my gears because, let's face it, if a coach wants to be a real jerk, there's accountability and recourse. He gets tossed from the game. I've been in games. And
some of our umpires, one of the problems that they have is that's part of their defense mechanism. And that's one of the things that we try to break out of their habit is when they get to that point where it's heated, their defense mechanism is to get louder rather than to calm things down. So they start escalating the situation.
Nothing gets under a guy's skin more than the louder he gets, the more calm you get. And I know that's the case. But, Dan, let me ask you this. What happens, and you coached earlier in your career as well, what happens when the official is the jerk? Because I've met them. There are guys that have a real chip on their shoulder. What recourse is there in that case?
Really, I guess the recourse is for the coach to get a hold of the commissioner of that league, then get a hold of somebody like Steve who was in charge of that umpire, and you got to go through the whole situation because I absolutely agree. When you get these guys, and you can tell who they are from minute one. As soon as they walk onto the field, it's as if they're God. And one of the reasons why I got into this was exactly that, because I've seen it before in hockey when my son's playing. You got a referee sitting with his arm up on the dasher. And actually I've gotten penalties for it because you say, at least make it look like you're interested in the game.
Pretend you want to be in position for a call.
Right. You get some umpires who just sit there behind the plate, never take the mask off, and try to make calls at first, second, and third. At least make two steps out.
Hey, but there should be a physical, and I don't know if there is, but there should be a physical component to the training of an umpire because I don't know if any of you guys do lacrosse or have daughters who play lacrosse. My daughters play, and I don't know enough about the sport, but there's an infraction at the 20-yard line or something like that. And we were at a tournament, and I had this guy, and he had to be 130, 132 years old. And he just stood. He may as well have had a bar stool at midfield that swiveled because that's how he called the game. And he was making calls on a grass field where, I was closer to the line, and I couldn't see it. And he was making these calls. It was kind of ridiculous. You know what? I want to get to a couple of emails that we got during the week. And after we do this, I got to get through because I want to get to this top 10 list of top rags against umpires. And Steve was kind enough to bring this shirt that he brought in that apparently he purchased in Cooperstown. It's called Hey Ump, and it's probably 30 different knocks against umpires. And I'm reading a couple of them, and the last one is the best one. I got to read this one. Ump, your butt just called. It wants your head out by tomorrow. And we're going to get to these, but I want to get to a quick email before we go to break here. It came in from Rudsell. Hey, Coach Tony. You know what? I want to get to the good one here. All right, there was a team that had a shortage of players. They decided to let a younger kid play up with the team. I could tell the kid was quite nervous, eager to please the coaches. However, the pitcher showed no mercy. Threw him 3 straight heaters up the middle. Young kid struck out. Second time at bat, same thing. During his third at bat, after the second strike, I heard a woman that I'm assuming is his mom yell with an angry voice, "Hey, Ump, aren't you ashamed of yourself? He's only 15. Now, normally, nothing someone yells would disturb my concentration, but that one remark shook me a bit for a few seconds. After the kid struck out, the catcher turns his head and said to me, with a big smile on his face, "Good thing my mom wasn't here to hear that. She would have had a field day with that poor lady." How much nonsense do you guys really catch where it's something so nonsensical like you should be telling the pitcher throw slower because the kid's younger? How much really stupid stuff do you just not even bother addressing?
I try to not listen to much of it at all. When it comes from a dugout, that's one thing, but certainly when a parent comes running up to the backstop and starts banging on the screen or yelling right through it, that's one thing. But we don't. I can say that I don't hear much of it.
I agree. You just totally tune it out. It's not worth it because it's aggravating. And what's the point?
Well, I got to tell you, when I was a player, and like I said, I was a genuine jerk, I would make it a point. And there was a lot more leniency back then. So I got away with a lot of stuff. But when you read this list, because a lot of my college buddies chimed in on this list, I would purposely get the umpire to look at me. I would say just enough to get the guy to look at me, and then I would just give him the old, "Hey, rabbit ears, concentrate on the game and get your ears out of our dugout," or, "Hey, what are you looking at me for? I can't help you as bad as your day is going." I mean, so as an ump, you got to have a very thick skin, and you know what? We all know you're blind, but you should be deaf. Do you agree? I mean, that's one I should have brought in there. But listen, we gotta get to a quick break here. Guys, you've been so terrific on this, and I really appreciate it. Steve, you already got your Hey Coach Tony T-shirt, even though you're not wearing it today.
I was going to.
Yeah, you were going to, but you didn't. So
I did have it on, and my wife said.
Yeah. I tell you what, here, heads up, Dan, that's for you. Larry, this is for you. Shirts are courtesy of Signature Marketing of Connecticut. They're great. Call Jennifer Holguin. She is at 203-232-0868. They make shirts. They make the Hey Coach Tony coffee mugs. They make everything. Whatever you got for your organization or your company, give them a call, 203-232-0868. They'll give you the perfect product to help you promote your business or your organization. You're listening. Hey, when we come back, by the way, I don't want to forget this. Next week, guys, we're going to be reopening the case of Anthony Baruto. Anthony Baruto is the high school aged pitcher who walks around on 2 prosthetic legs, who was cut from his high school baseball team. Some recent allegations that I'm questioning. They're saying that the coach called mom and the kid and informed them that he was being cut because he has no legs. Got to tell you, I find that hard to believe. These guys are wincing. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying it's not true, but I am digging in because the backlash I caught online for just asking questions about something that seems so tough to swallow, I got positioned as the devil himself. So we're going to reopen this case of Anthony Baruto next week on the show. You're not going to want to miss it. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. I think I baited my 3 calm, cool, and collected umpires with that whole comment of Anthony Baruto before the break because we started getting into it. So next week will be a good show. All right, guys, listen, I like to have fun in the last segment whenever I can. So let me I'm not going to get sued by David Letterman anytime soon, but you please allow me to walk you through this thing that I want to go through. I don't know if we're going to have time to get to Steve's shirt, but I will ask him to post this up on the blog because there's some good ones there. But I want to turn it over to the listeners. We have our top 10 list of clever insults to umpires. I had to limit it to 10. But if we have time, I'll see if I can squeeze in some of the honorable mentions. If you have a quick one you want to add in, give me a call in the studio. It's 855-HEY-COACH. Important to note, I got a few of these that I loved, but I just cannot say them on the radio. Some of them are a little off color, but they should be safe for radio consumption. All right, here it is. Top 10 clever insults for umpires. Number 10 comes into us from Kenny in East Meadow out in Long Island. His was, "Excuse me, Blue, but did they change home plate and make it round? Because you haven't seen a corner the whole game." That's number 10. Oh, you're going to start rebutting them one at a time? Go ahead.
I'd say, young man, do you want to be around for the rest of the game? That's how it would start, and I'd laugh.
Yeah, Mr. Chip on his shoulder. All right.
The corner's a lot further away now.
Yeah, but there are no such thing as make-up calls. All right, guys. Number 9 comes into us from Tim from Stanford, who says, "Hey, Blue, kick your dog. He's been lying to you all day." Now, for those of you who don't understand the subtlety of this one, and that's on the shirt, yes, he's referring to the seeing eye dog that this blind umpire would need in order to do his job effectively. This one I like. Number 8, and by the way, if it came in from several guys, I'm not going to say the name. "Blue, I missed that last call. Was it heads or tails?" Number 7 comes in from Frank in Malvern. And this is my favorite. By the way, Frank in Malvern is my brother. And this is my favorite one. "Hey, Blue, you must have been the lookout at Pearl Harbor." Now, the problem here is that one's getting old. Some of the younger umpires don't even understand the relevance of that joke, so I don't really use that one anymore. Number 6 comes in from Bernie in El Paso, Texas. I love the fact that we got people listening across the country. But Bernie writes in with his jab, which is, "Hey, Blue, if you don't believe me, you can check the rule book. Hang on a second. I'm pretty sure I have one here written in Braille for you." All right. Number 5 comes in from Kevin in Rockville Center. Always has something interesting to add, usually pretty intellectual. And he comes up with one that is probably my favorite, but it made number 5. "Hey, Blue, my cell phone has a great view of this game. It says 5 missed calls." Kevin, that was the most clever. I got to tell you, I like it, but it didn't get number 1. Larry, one of your buddies, I don't know if you know him, but Scott from White Plains wrote in, and this is another one that I think is very clever. "Excuse me, Blue, I'm just curious. Which of these is your kid?" I'm digging that. I mean, these are clever. These are clever. Number 3. "Hey, Blue, make sure to pick up tomorrow's paper so you can read about this great game that you're missing." All right. Number 2 comes in from Rocky in Westchester. And I like this one because it goes to what I said earlier. And this is an oldie but a goodie. When the umpire says, "Coach, say one more word and you're gone," Rocky's response is, "Okay, Blue, I got you, but can you throw me out for thinking?" And of course, the umpire says no, and he says, "Great, because I think you are the worst umpire I have ever seen." And my favorite, which comes straight from Coach Tony in his darker, younger years, and this one is a little off color, and you might need a little intelligence to sort this one out. And bear with me, I hope I don't get thrown off the air for this one. My number 1 clever insult to an umpire: "Hey, Blue, why don't you bend over and try looking with your good eye?" Now, all the old Mercy College guys are laughing their butts off right now. And like I said, think about that one for a second. It's off color, but it is very, very funny. You know what? We got a couple more minutes. Any of the ones on this shirt that just jump off at you, Steve? Because you have a second to look at one, because there's another good one here that I wanted to hit. "Hey, Blue, I'd ask if you're blind, but I just saw your wife in the parking lot, and that really answered that question for me."
Oh, man.
Go ahead, give me one, and then I got one more good one I want to hit.
This one, I mean, there's so many to pick from on this. Like you said, there's 30 or some in here. I mean, here's one. "Does your wife let you make decisions at home?" "You couldn't make the right call if you had a phone book." "Your dog barks twice if it's a strike."
Okay, there you go. Another seeing eye joke. By the way, here's another really cool one. When you're playing a night game under the lights, one coach wrote in and said, "Hey, Blue, I didn't know you like to sleep with the lights on."
Or, "If you had one more eye, you'd be a cyclops."
Ah, okay. Clever. I got that. Anybody want it? Larry's got one?
Yeah, no, I just want to say, like, we're regular people, okay? And if a hitter said that to me, the first thing I'm going to do is laugh, okay? Because some of them are really, really funny, okay? That I might quick laugh, but that's enough of the jokes for
Well, you
today,
know what? I got to tell you.
We're human beings. We're regular guys.
When I played in college, that really was part of it. And I would actually, all umpires know you're going to catch some heat, even from the players that you like. You know you're going to catch some heat. And so I would do this. And there are some of my favorite umpires, and if they're listening, and I hope they are, there's this one, my buddy Milt, who was always terrific. Harvey was always great. I don't know if you know, Milt was this big, muscular black guy, drove this big, old, like, yellow Studebaker. He was the man. From the Bronx, my favorite ump of all time. I pray to God he's listening. Let me see, what do I got here? Nooch, the president of the Mongo Nation, just wrote one in, and it was an absolute insult. If you happen to be doing, and none of you guys are what I would call elderly, but I've seen elderly umps that just don't move. And one game when he saw there was an older umpire, and this is a bit dated. Hey, Blue, the producer from Cocoon just called. They need you back on set. That has nothing to do with baseball, but that was clever. So, Nooch, I want to give you props. By the way, Nooch is supposed to be, he is the president of Coach Tony's fan club, the Mongo Nation. He's supposed to join me in studio next week because he had a lot of good ideas of this whole Anthony Baruto double amputee thing. It may get ugly, guys, but you know what? You may not like it, you may love it, but you're definitely going to want to listen. Anything else you want to pick off the shirt here, Steve?
Well, there's one that you had earlier that came up that I'm surprised didn't come up in conversation. The kid that got hit in the helmet and said it was a foul ball. You know, is that your final answer?
All right, well, for those of us who liked when Regis Philbin was doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that's great. Oh, hey, Blue, if you wanted to just sit there and watch the game, you should have bought a ticket like the rest of us. That's a pretty clever one. It's not edgy enough to make the top 10. What else we got?
Mix in some consistency once in a while.
By the way, and I was just going to read one that's very similar to that. That was the old rag. Just be consistent. Just be consistent. Well, at the end of one game, my brother John happened to mention to an umpire and said, hey, Blue, when I asked you to be consistent, I didn't mean for you to be consistently horrible. Now, this has nothing to do with anything of any relevance, but I'm just having a lot of fun here. Dan, do you see one that you like?
Yeah, the French judge says it's a strike. One of the oldies but goodies, how many fingers am I holding up?
Yeah, those are the corny ones. I don't do that. Oh, somebody poke a hole in his mask so we can see. Yeah, that's a good one. Blue, are you going to get in position for any of these calls? You're growing roots?
There's one that says, LensCrafter's called and your glasses are ready.
It's been a half an hour, your glasses are ready. My favorite, I got to tell you, my new favorite one is the one at the bottom. Hey, Blue, what, your butt called? Your head has until tomorrow to get out? I am making a total ass of myself on the show today, but you know what? I am having an absolute hoot. Listen, a quick second for some, I guess, some back to reality stuff. One thing I think it's very important for all of us as coaches, players, and parents to remember, there are a couple of things that really do jump out. One is umpires do not expect to get every call right. You know that you make mistakes. Making up for one mistake by making another is never the solution, so don't ask for the make-up call. Don't expect to get them. The one that really, really jumps off the page at me, and it's even as a coach sitting in the dugout. You know, if I'm on the third base dugout and a right-handed batter's up and my pitcher paints the corner, or I think he paints the corner, I know. And I'll ask my catcher. And by the way, I wonder if you guys think that's the right way to do it. I'll just say to my catcher, where did that miss? I won't say was it a strike. I'll just say, where did that miss? And if someone misses off the corner, it's tough to argue balls and strikes for anybody. Because, let's face it, nobody, pitcher included, has a better view of what's, maybe the catcher, but with the exception of the catcher, nobody has a better angle than you guys do. If you're in position for a call, there's no seat in the stands that outdoes the position that an umpire has when he's in the right position to make a call. And you may not like the calls. You may argue with some interpretations of the rules. But isn't the simple rule for parents? Just shut up.
To be honest, one of the things, too, I mean, the catcher actually doesn't have as good a view as we do. We're back a little bit and have a better perspective of that strike zone because they're sitting right in it.
I gotcha.
A lot of times you're not looking necessarily that it is a strike, but you're seeing that it isn't a strike, by having a little bit of distance to it.
Larry, what were you going to say?
Another thing, you were talking about position. And if you have real good position, even if you have a banger at the plate, you can really see if that runner is out or safe by 6 inches.
Absolutely.
And who is going to really argue with you from 100 feet away if I'm 6 feet away from the play?
All the parents.
The parents are gonna. Hey guys, listen, that's gonna put the kibosh in another quick hour of my life, guys. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed having you here in the studio. You are welcome back anytime. Hey folks, every Saturday 9 a.m. Please join me for Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.